I always say listening is where the power is. And one of my favorite quotes that I share is speak in a way that people love listening to you,
Mm.
but the power is listen in a way that people love speaking to you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Go in there. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
And we are back for another exciting episode of Adventures in Business. Mandy, how are we doing today?
Amani, I'm giving jazz hands. We're doing
Okay.
great.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi. We're I'm still in my remote location, and
Okay.
it still is a little echoey because we don't have furniture in here yet, but we will very soon. But you'll see, there's a couple different pieces of art now, so it's not as sparse as it was before. And
Okay.
we're moving and grooving. I forgot what packing boxes and moving things feels like on your body. I'm a little
Yeah.
sore today. I'm a little
Yeah.
a little sore right now.
It's not easy. It's not easy,
Yeah.
but some way, somehow, you'll get through it.
It's good to move like that though. It's very good to move your body like that. It's
Okay. I don't
different
disagree.
ways. Yeah,
I
different
don't
ways.
disagree. Yeah.
I want to know what you did this weekend because I saw you on social media and I have a lot of questions about your
Okay.
whereabouts.
So last Thursday, I went to a group dinner, and it was my friend Tina, Christina, and her parents, Tina's parents. We were at the Palms Hotel in Vegas, and we were talking about shows there. I was like, I love it when I love Babyface. I love to see a show again or whatever. And it turns out we checked; he was playing there this weekend. So Tina's mom was like, well, because we do so much business here at the hotel, they gamble there a lot, they stay there a lot. We get free tickets to a lot of the shows. I said, well, if you happen to get a free ticket or two for Babyface, you let me know. So Friday comes, it's like, oh, no tickets today. You can get one, but I don't think it'll happen. So I'm going about my day. All weekend I was grading papers, so projects and papers. So I was just like, whew, fried. And I'm cooking dinner. It's like 6:30, 6:45 on Saturday, and I get a text message. Oh, we have two tickets to the show tonight. Are you still interested? I said,
Amani.
absolutely. Let me pack up my dinner. I went there because I had no time to call anyone else. I went there, got my ticket to Babyface. We were sitting in the box seat there, and I went to the show. It was amazing, just as good as the first time I saw him. So it was great.
Amani. Okay, did you ask him to be on our podcast?
Well, I couldn't get backstage. I couldn't get to him.
Did
They
you fold up a note and just have him pass it up to the stage?
did try that, but this is
Okay,
still
okay.
building up. This is building up some credibility, whatever. See you twice, so that's what I did this weekend. So that was the highlight. That was one of the highlights of the weekend, right there.
What was the best part of the concert?
Um, I would say just like how he was talking and telling stories and told some stories about certain songs he sang, and then I always love it when he kind of shows the audience all the different hits he's written that you might not be aware of and stuff. So it was cool. I was, just happy like a pig in mud.
I'm so happy. I couldn't tell who was singing, but
Yeah, yeah,
I knew you were at a concert and it seemed to be Vegas. So that was exciting. Good for you,
yeah.
Amani.
Maybe next time I'll work on my social media clips because I try to keep my phone down because I want to enjoy the show.
Of
But
course, yes.
next time I'll maybe take one a good clip. So that was my weekend. Now for our guest today, I'm so excited because we have like a legend in the speaking industry,
Yes.
and she's worked as professional speaker in education, all sorts of things. We're going to learn a lot today. I have lots of questions. She's also a fellow University of Maryland. Well, I didn't graduate from Maryland. I just grew up next to Maryland. So we're also Turtle fans, Terrapin fans there. Fear the Turtle. So we want to welcome to the stage Sarita Maybin coming to the stage. So round of applause. We're going to get you on stage. There we go.
Hi, I
Okay.
love the applause.
We got all sorts of little things here. What else we got? We have funny little sounds too, but like this one here. It's a little Jeopardy music right there.
I
So we have all
love it.
sorts of stuff.
I
But
loved
welcome
it.
to the show. We're so excited to have you. I'm curious, out of all the jobs you've had, which one has been your favorite and why?
Now, when you say jobs, are you speaking of my speaking engagements that I've had, or back in the day when I had real jobs?
But well, so back in the day when you had real jobs, like one job would be professional speaker. Another job was when you were a dean at a university. Another job was when you were like at Old Dominion. So like, which one was your
Ah,
favorite and
got it.
why?
I
Yes.
have to say my all-time favorite was when I was at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. That was actually the dream. When I got my master's degree in college administration, the dream was to be a director of new student programs and all summer run programs for new students and their parents because the energy, they were just so excited. I just loved the positive energy of new students and their parents. And so that was probably my favorite of all my higher ed career. That was super
Okay.
fun.
Okay. Now, when you think about your speaking career, can you take us back to the first time you were speaking on stage, your first ever speech? Tell us about that time.
First ever speech.
Hmm.
Well, there's probably a series of firsts since I did a lot of speaking on the side when I worked in the university arena.
Hmm.
As I always say, for t-shirts, mugs, and tchotchke. But I do remember when I was officially signed as a speaker with the seminar company, which is how I started. I did
Hmm.
about 5.5 years as a contract trainer with the seminar company, and I hadn't had any speaking engagements yet. And I remember my then husband, who was in the Marine Corps, was a recruiter for the Marine Corps. And I remember his unit needed a professional development day. And I remember him saying, "Oh, my wife just became a speaker." And so I spoke to 100 Marines on time management.
Okay.
And I thought if I could speak to 100 Marine Corps recruiters who are about as rowdy as it gets, I'm ready for anything. Nothing will throw me if I can survive this group. So I just remember that was a true test of my ability to speak off the cuff, to handle any kind of heckling, any drama that might occur. That was definitely a baptism by fire.
Okay. Okay. Now, as you went through and you grew your speaking career, when was the time and what made you make the decision to be like, let's go full time, all in with speaking?
I had gotten a lot of clues when I was in the university arena. As you
Mhm.
well know, there's so many
Mhm.
opportunities, whether it be teaching students or speaking in front of staff, doing things in the community. So I had gotten a lot of clues that speaking was something I was good at. And I remember when I would speak and do the little freebies for the keychains, mugs, and t-shirts, someone would lean over in a hushed tone and they would say, you missed your calling, don't you? And
Oh,
I heard that over and over, and I was like, wow. And I could feel it that was something I discovered I was good at, especially when there were groups that would come to presentations and they didn't want to be there. At some universities, there was mandatory training, and I remember having to do some of those, and people would leave feeling positive. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So
hmm.
so that was really the nudge, and then at some point I did actually leave the university following the then husband, and I thought, you know what, I have nothing to lose. I have to do a job search. Why not just humor myself and send out a few videos to one of those seminar companies and see if
Okay.
they deem me worthy as a contractor. And so when I first got that contract to work with the seminar company, again, how I started, that was really proof that okay, maybe I do have something here and could make a career of this.
Okay. All right. So, Mandy, we've just been kind of talking about how she got the inspiration to maybe go for it, her first speech ever, and how that all works. So, you can kind of just pick up where we left off.
I will pick up where we left off. Thanks for I had some technical difficulties at my
Yeah.
remote office, everybody. So thank you for your patience.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so I want to talk about difficult conversations because this is your cat's pajamas, right? This is what you do all day, every day, and you teach the world on what to do. And it was a couple months ago, and I was co-working with a friend of mine, a fellow business owner. And normally, if I'm going to co-work with somebody, I won't take any phone calls. This happened to be a day where an emergency call came in, and I, said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I wouldn't normally do this, but I have to take this." And I took the call, And after the call, my friend says, wow, you have a lot of difficult conversations. Like I could tell you have a lot of difficult conversations because I could tell the person on the other end of that call wasn't being nice and you somehow stayed nice and it felt like you got what you wanted, but it also felt like he got what he wanted. And I was shocked by that because number one, I didn't think she was listening. But number two, I feel like because I have, especially in this contract negotiation world that I live in, I have so many difficult conversations. I don't even realize I'm having them. So I have a two-part question for you since this is your expertise is how can people like me in all professions that have consistent difficult conversations, how can we be less numb to this? And the second part of that is on the flip side, how can we get people that don't have many difficult conversations, how can we get them to be less fearful of them and welcome them?
Oh, what a great two-part question. I think, Mandy, first of all, if you work in the contract negotiation world, you are the true expert. Anyone who has to do that day in
I
and
don't
day
know.
out. And in fact, I dare say you've answered your own question because you really said something I think that is the nugget of handling difficult conversations. You said when you got off the phone, your colleague noticed that when you were speaking, you were able to get what you wanted and they were able to get what they wanted. And when we look at that as the goal, because so often it's about I want to be right, I want my way. It's all about me. And so, but the key is to shift to exactly what you said, to look at how can they get what they want and I get what I want. So it's a mutually agreeable situation. And I really think that is the nugget. And I have a feeling you've already perfected that, just doing that day in and day out. I hate to use the overused term win-win, but really that's kind of what it is. But for new people who don't, I shouldn't say new, but people who don't do that very often, I think the secret is to not take it personally. So often when someone comes at us with something we don't like, or they give us an offer we don't want, or they say something we don't want to hear, we immediately take it personally. When instead, I think we can step back and try to understand from their point of view, what is it that might be going on to offer them a benefit of the doubt. I remember one time a woman came to me after one of my keynotes and she says, Sarita, I think my coworker is laying awake at night plotting my demise.
It happens. It
And,
happens.
normally when people come to me with these questions after my keynotes, I try to say something witty and wise. But she came at me so fast with that comment. Before I could even censor myself, I said, no, she's not. You're laying awake at night. She's sleeping soundly. And what I meant by that was she's not plotting your demise. And in fact, it's probably not even about you. She's just doing what she do and being who she is. And now you've taken that as somehow a personal affront. So again, to people who really people, even those of us who do a lot of difficult conversations, we could benefit from not taking things personally and giving people the benefit of the doubt.
I love that. And because you do have so many difficult conversations in all different industries, like how do we get less numb to it? How do we say, instead of like, oh, here we go again, like how do we keep that fresh or open our minds to different approaches to difficult conversations? Like how can we do better if the ones that are doing it all the time?
Yeah, I love it. How can we do better? Well, it's interesting that you speak of getting numb because when we go at it and say, "Oh, here we go," it's going to be the same old, same old. It's like we go into rote, muscle memory, automatic. But to instead to go in and say, "Okay, let me just stay neutral and see who this person is and what they want." To go with fresh eyes, for lack of a better word, and see the situation as an individual situation, not saying, oh, this is going to be one of those dot, 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 where they want this, or this is going to be like blah, blah, blah. But instead saying, let me just reserve judgment until I see what this person wants.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like just not assigning identity to that, projecting identity, right? Like, oh, I know your type. This is what you're gonna
Yeah.
just really looking at it fresh. That's good feedback. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I had a friend one time who said we should go into conflict like people go into games, like sports games. I'm not a huge sports person. I don't watch a lot of sports, but I thought it was interesting that they said, if we go at it like how can we go into this situation and make it a win versus, or how can we go into this situation looking for a win versus going and bracing ourselves for some difficulty, like, oh, this is going to be the competitor, they're going to be awful, I'm bracing myself. So instead of going in bracing ourselves, to go in and look at, how do we want this to work out, how can we make this a win. So I think sometimes we work ourselves into a lather, just bracing ourselves for some ugliness, and maybe we don't have to do that.
Look for the win. That's good.
Yeah. Now, is there a difference when you're coaching and advising people or teaching about having difficult conversations when it comes to professional and then personal? What's the difference in terms of that?
None. Okay, that was my short answer. It's so funny. One of my favorite quotes that I share when I do my keynotes is something a woman told me. In fact, one of my mentors told me years ago. She says, Sarita, home is where we go when we're tired of being nice. And I thought it was interesting that when we're out and about, we're using all these wonderful phrases. How can we resolve this? Let's work together. I'd appreciate your input. And then we go home and say, do it. So but I feel like we really could benefit from making it the same, going in with a positive, we work together approach versus me, you, and you better do it. Because that's how we are sometimes when we go to our personal lives. We've got nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants the finger wag.
No.
Nobody.
Nobody wants to finger
Nobody
wag.
wants that.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny that we're good about refraining from the finger wag in our real lives, in our, I shouldn't say our real lives, but in our business mode. But then we go home and immediately, we're in the finger wag mode.
Yeah.
What about, because we're on screen, we're on this episode with three authors, and you are a two-time author, correct? Two books,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
How has being an author changed your career and your life?
It's interesting that you should ask that, because I think outside of the professional speaking world, most people don't realize that professional speaking is an actual career. And so I always find it funny when I'll send my bio to a speaking client for their website or their promotional materials, and it'll say on there usually something like international speaker, communication expert, and author. And then I go to the website to see what they actually put up, and it sometimes it just says author, because they
Hmm.
don't acknowledge communication expert, and they definitely don't know what international speaker is. And they're like, well, she's speaking, so she's a speaker. But they don't realize that that's not just a verb, it's also a noun. And so I get a kick out of that, because and author does lend a little bit more credibility because they know what that is. And I must say it's kind of a nice little perk as well, because often clients will say, hey, let's buy some books, and can you send over some books from the publisher, and then I'll have a book signing. And so that's always a nice perk to do that,
Yeah.
and a credibility builder as well.
Got it. Yeah. Now, so you wrote the books, you're speaking, and we'll probably get into this a lot, but I'm just curious because I read a stat the other day where it says like maybe 2% of professional speakers make it past year two as a professional speaker.
Wow, what,
What
what was that percentage again?
2%? I need to go fact check that, but it was very low. It was a low percentage, is what I'll say. Because a lot of people try it out, say, "Oh, though this is hard. Like I have to actually do business development and find opportunities." Like, no, nope, I'm out. So, what has been the key for you to have such longevity as a professional speaker?
I think two things have really been helpful. One is to have a third party person who helps prospect. It's nothing more powerful than someone calling and saying, "Oh, Sarita's great. You should have her for your presentation," versus me calling saying, "Hey, I'm great. Have me for your presentation." So
Right.
there's a certain gravitas that you get when you have the third party endorsement. So I've had the blessing really to have a woman who's been with me for almost 20 years, working on commission. And so when a client says, "Oh, you can have the list of all the people who attended the conference," I don't have time to call all those people, but she does. And so it just following up on those possibilities, or if someone reaches out via my contact form on my website and says, "Oh, we're interested. The conference is going to be in 2027." I don't have time to follow up for the next year and a half, 2 years, but she can put that in her tickler file and she can do the follow up. So having that person who can help with the prospecting has been huge. I also highly recommend doing free speaking as I like to
Mm.
call it, marketing opportunities
Mhm.
selectively. If someone says, hey, here's a group of 100 HR people, do you want to come speak at our lunch? Yes, I do, because that's much more powerful than calling 100 HR people one by one by one and they don't know you from Adam. So I feel like for me, people have I'm not a celebrity speaker. I'm a mere mortal speaker. And so people will not know to seek me out. They will have to see me. And then they say, oh, okay, we could benefit from that. And then they refer somebody else and so on. So the and so on effect is really, as I call it, has been beneficial.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah,
proof's in the pudding. The proof is in
yeah,
the
yeah.
pudding. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to hang here since we're talking about business development of I looked at some of your lineups, right? And what I loved is you did a post recently where you showed where you got that business opportunity from. And
Mm.
I thought
Mm,
that was really impactful from a sales perspective. And it occurred to me that you're probably very good at asking for referrals or thanking people for referrals. So I wanted to ask you,
mm.
what is your request for referral style, or what is like how do you thank people for referrals?
That's interesting because that is two very different questions. And I
It
feel like
is.
I'm good at one and not as good at the other.
That's
Um,
fine.
I'm probably good at asking, bad at thanking. How about that?
Mm. You gotta up
You
your
know,
gratitude.
yeah, I mean, I do express gratitude and appreciation, but um, there's like people who say, "Oh, you should send this gorgeous gift, thanking them for referral," or "Oh, you should," like all of these tangible things as a big thank you. Oh, I sent them a gift basket. I'm not one to do that with informal referrals because when I speak for a client, I do send them something really cool. I even have a lady who does custom chocolates with their logo on it, and so I do some real special thank yous for the speaking engagement. But then if something comes from that, a referral, I may not circle back and say, oh, hey, thank you for that referral, even though I know that's where it came from. So I'm more likely to thank and appreciate for the actual speaking engagement. But the more powerful part of that, though, is the asking. I discovered that clients don't automatically know to refer us. They don't realize that that's the lifeblood of our business.
Yeah.
And so I have found myself in conversations with them, like if I'm at a gathering after I speak, or if I'm at and I do a lot of on site networking as well. But I might say to them, this has been a fun group for the such and such a state conference. Who are your colleagues in the other states who bring in speakers? Would you mind sharing those names, or would you be comfortable giving me their contact information? So I find myself having to be intentional about asking for referrals of counterparts because that's where the referrals really come from, consciously, intentionally asking.
But I think that's powerful because in my sales coaching practice, this is the crux. You do a really good job, but then you forget to ask for referrals or you forget to thank people for referrals. And it's the easiest way to get business. And when I saw your list, I'm like, this is a lady who knows how to ask for referrals. So I appreciate you buttering them up at first, right? You're like, this is a really fun group. Who else does the same thing that you do? I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
just a great reminder to anybody that's listening.
The other thing I should mention is a lot of times the referrals don't even come from that client. It comes from someone in the audience because I don't do much one-on-one coaching. I do like 99.9% uh, groups, speaking to groups, keynotes. So if I've got a room of 1,000 people or even 500 people, I have to make sure that I put it out to all of them. And so sometimes the contact from my on my somebody reaches out to me. It's someone who said, "Oh, I saw you speak at." In fact, that's my favorite email. When I open it and it says, "I saw you speak at," it's like, "Oh yeah, I know that's going somewhere, and we have an event. Would you be available?" So I sometimes have my little, I think they're clever lines when I'm speaking to the group. I might even say something like. Oh, you all might know some people who could benefit from this. Please spread the good word, or feel free to
Mm.
pass my name along. So I might throw in there just a subtle little comment about, feel free to pass along the information. And then I do a teaser where I give in fact I have my little card. I give them a every time I do a keynote, I have a little card with my information, and then on the back I have my top 10 positive communication phrases. So usually after I do this little segment, I'll say, I know some of y'all know some people and you need more than 10 phrases. So, so if you want 50 phrases, feel free to scan the QR code, which I'll have on the screen. Scan the QR code and you'll get an automatic PDF with 50 phrases, as well as my once a month, what do you say, communique, which is really another thing that's been a lifeblood, is having the communique every month to those who liked what they saw. And it's so funny because I'll sometimes get an email and I'll think, wonder what prompted them to reach out. And I'll scroll down and see that it's a reply to one of my most recent monthly emails. And so that's really the only hope of staying connected with all those people, is the ones that like you will follow you and get the monthly newsletter. And the fact that all conferences now have gone green, I've got to have something that they can take away that's a hard copy, because they'll say, oh, that lady was nice. I wish I could remember her name. That's like my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Really liked
Right.
your presentation, but I can't remember what her name was.
Yeah.
So
I love
that's always key.
I love the power of suggestion in there. That's so important. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Now, what have been maybe some of the, let's see how I want to ask this, like tough times, like resilience, to be in the industry for so long and to be so successful on so many big stages, you had to have some peaks and valleys in like your career. Can you
Mm.
share maybe some of them and what you learned from those experiences?
Ooh, what a great question, Amani. I love that. What did I learn from those experiences? Yeah, peaks and valleys really is the definition of this career. The highs and lows, the feast or famine. That
Yes.
is really the nature of the beast. I hate to say, and I think in the years, wow, so many peaks and valleys. And I think for me, the ironically the biggest, I mean, there was 9/11, and that was a drama because people didn't want to go anywhere. And then of course there was the recession in 2010ish, and then there's been the pandemic. So those are the ones everybody knows about. But for me, my worst year financially in my business was when I was writing my first book.
Hmm.
And that book came out way back in 2006, which is now 19 years ago. And I remember when I was writing, I was not doing all the little nice things I mentioned, the reaching out, the prospecting, all of that. I was busy writing. And as a result, that was a bad year. So what I learned is you can't not be networking. You can't not be promoting. There is no rest for the weary. People think, oh, I can just go out and do network for a year and then I'm good to go forever.
No.
And I hate to burst people's bubble, but the networking is ongoing. And that
Yes.
year, I really was doing none of the outreach things that I've even talked about with you all today. And as a result, it showed. The
Mm.
following year showed. And you don't see it right away because we're sometimes 3 months out, 6 months out, 8, 10, even a year. In fact, I'm speaking in a few weeks for an event in Myrtle Beach, and they booked me last summer of 2024. So, so really, our lack of networking and our lack of prospecting will show up the next year
Yes.
when we see, oh, I didn't do anything last year to keep the coffers filled and
Yeah.
keep the pipeline filled.
Yeah. Great, great lesson. Another thing that comes up is I first met Sarita. We were in a Black NSA mastermind group, and we were
Tell
having
everybody
our
what NSA is, just in case they don't know.
Yes,
okay.
yes, do
Yeah, thank you,
tell.
thank you. National Speakers
Mhm.
Association, and Black NSA is one of the first virtual chapter. And I joined, and we were in a mastermind where there's like a group of about 50 of us, and we break into groups and talk. And Serena came on camera. She was just a member, wasn't a facilitator, and she was talking to the newer speakers in the room. And you gave such poignant advice for new speakers. I
Uh-oh,
was
what did I
wondering
say?
if you would, well, you can tell us what you want. Like if you were to meet someone who just entered the speaking industry today, or they were thinking about entering it like today, what's maybe three pieces of advice you give for new speakers to kind of set them off on the right path?
Well, my first thought that comes to my mind is don't quit your day job. Uh, I feel like a lot of times people I'm not a risk taker, and people say, how could you not be a risk taker? You've been an entrepreneur, you've been in business for yourself for 25 years. How could you not be a risk taker? And I always tell people that some of my transitions, I didn't leap, I was pushed. And then I had to build the little parachute on the way down. And, when I first started I was a contract trainer, and that opportunity came to an abrupt halt with 3 months running start. And so that was not the ideal way to do it. So I always tell people, it's better if you have some security financially, like even a part-time job while you're building your business, because it's a long runway. It's speaking is the long game. And so
Mhm.
that's the thing that's most disconcerting. I think people think, oh, a couple months and I'll be up and running. And sometimes it really takes a little bit longer runway. So I jokingly, but seriously say, don't quit your day job. And I sometimes tell people, I was speaking for free for that whole time I was in higher ed for a dozen years. I was speaking for free on the side. And so I think we don't just suddenly overnight decide to become a speaker and start speaking. Most of us have a long runway. The other thing I would say is to join a group of people who are doing what you want to do. If you want to do something, no matter what it is, go where people are. And I'll use my husband as an example. He's a motorcycle rider. I don't ride, much to his dismay, um, but when he actually retired, in fact, 2020, and he decided he was going to spend more time doing motorcycle stuff. So he immediately joined a group here in San Diego that does riding, and they have trips and they do things together. He follows them on YouTube. There's a guy on YouTube that talks about different ways to improve your motorcycle. It's resulted in him up leveling his bike because he's got these cool resources. So I say go where people are doing what you want to do. That would probably be the biggest advice for newcomers. And because I hear people saying, oh, well, I'm going to join this little group or that little group. No, those people aren't doing what you want to do. So go to places like the National Speakers Association. Even when I was working in the university at UCSD in my other life, University of California, I joined Toastmasters
Mm.
and would go once a week on the way to work and got some fine tuning, first of all, in the speaking before I even moved into the business of speaking. And so, again, go where people are doing what you want to do.
Excellent
Don't
advice.
reinvent the wheel. How about that? Don't
There you
reinvent
Yeah.
go.
the
Love
wheel.
that.
And work on your craft too. I love
Yes.
that, you're just like continually work on your craft. I want to quote something that you said in your TEDx talk, because,
Uh-oh.
well, it's funny because as soon as you said it, I was like, God, I love that John Mayer song. And then then I listened to your TEDx talk and you ended with that, which was amazing. But I would just want to dive deeper into what you mean by this. So the quote is, say what you mean in a nice way. What do you mean by that?
Yes. And by the way, I so desperately wanted to close my TEDx talk with John Mayer, a clip from his song, but there was a whole licensing issue.
Oh,
Yes.
And it
yeah,
said
Yeah.
we've
people were
talked
not,
about
like,
that.
no, can't do that. So
Yeah.
I just had to recite the words to the song as my closing. Um, but yeah, what I mean by, and it's funny you should say, what do I mean by say things in a nice way? Because I have to say that my mantra in life is say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean.
Mm. Okay.
And
Mm.
that's the title I wanted for my new book, my 2020 book. That's the title I wanted, but it would not fit on the spine. It was too long. So instead of say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean, it became say what you mean in a nice way. And I always feel like that harks back to Assertiveness 101 from way back in the day, which is about saying what you mean, taking responsibility for what you need or what you want by saying, I would appreciate, I would prefer, we would like, versus, as we talked about earlier, the finger wagging. You better, you need to. And Mandy, I think you even said it earlier, again, when you said, how can they get what they want and how can I get what I want? That really is like the foundation of my whole speaking platform, which is really say what you mean in a nice way. So we don't have to be ugly when we make requests. We can say it in a way that allows the other person some grace, appreciates the other person, respects the other person.
So before you continue, Manny, can you
Yeah.
repeat that phrase that you like, your mantra? Because I want to just repeat it for us, please. Say what you mean. Go ahead, the whole thing, the 3 lines.
Oh, the full say
Yeah.
what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean.
So then,
And that's the grammar police, of course, will say that's not grammatically correct, but oh well.
yeah. So we gave
Just
you
say
some
what you
snaps for
mean
that.
what you say,
We,
but don't say it mean.
yes. Yeah. So we gave you some finger snaps for that. So yeah, we put
Oh,
that in there.
Monty. I love that.
I appreciate the finger snaps.
Serta, I have to ask you, have you ever been to the Women in Tourism Hospitality Conference in San Diego?
You talking about the WIF, San Diego WIF,
Yes,
with
yes,
Clara Carter?
yes.
Shout out to my buddy Clara.
Oh,
Uh,
Clara's been on our show. We love Clara. We love
oh my
Clara.
darn! So
Yes.
Clara and I go back 20 some years. When she first started Multicultural Convention Services Network
Yeah.
back about the same time I was moving into full-time speaking,
Yeah.
excuse me, in the early 2000s. So
Hmm.
I've been attending her events off and on over the years. And then, of course, she created the Women in Tourism. It was a lunch originally.
Yeah.
I'm putting in a plug for Clara now. Clara's San Diego, well, it started out as San Diego Women in Tourism lunch. And I went to the lunch and I remember she sidles up to me and she says, Sarita, this lunch is going to at some point become a conference. So stand by because I'm going to need you to do some communication presentations at this conference. And so, sure enough, it became a conference. And then I actually donated my time as a speaker to support her and did a communication presentation at a couple years ago at one of her now international Women in Tourism and Hospitality conference.
Okay,
So
so I was there. Okay, so this is crazy.
I'm surprised we
I
didn't cross paths. If we
well,
were
I
like ships in the night.
we had to have. So just when you said what you just said, I was like, I have seen you speak before. And so after that year, I've known Clara since she started her multicultural network too. She was a client of mine when I was on the hotel side 20 plus years ago. So I
Mhm.
met her, but I was at the conference. Now that you're saying this, that you spoke at, because I wrote down a whole bunch of quotes that different speakers said. And say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean, is one of the 12 quotes that I wrote down.
Oh,
And I
well,
actually,
I made the
I
top 12.
yes,
Woohoo!
and I put it on a calendar for Clara as like a thank you for the conference. And
I love it.
I think that was like April's quote or something, because I see it every year. And as you said that, I'm like, I've seen this lady before.
That
That's
is
so what a
hilarious. It's a
crazy
small
small
world. Well, San
world.
Diego, San
Yeah.
Diego is a small world for sure.
Yeah, small world. Well, I love that. What follow up to that is, like John Mayer's song is say what you need to say, but your TEDx talk is say what you mean to say. So do you see a difference between saying what you mean to say or saying what you need to say? Or is it all the same to you?
Well, it's kind of like the two part of say what you mean and mean what you say, and then of course the don't say it mean part. But I think sometimes we don't say what we mean. We go around the barn and we drop hints and we communicate indirectly. Um, so I think just being able to really ask for what you want, to say what you really need, and to do that in a way that's respectful for both you and the other person. So maybe that's the fine line is being able to actually express what you want instead of hint dropping. We always I'm in the early years, I remember when I was in the university and I was doing workshops. Had a chance to do some workshops for staff, and we were giving the example about how someone would say, "Sure would be nice if people would come on time." And and what an interesting example of people just dropping hints to the whole staff. It would be like they would say, "It'd be nice if people would come on time," rather than having a conversation with the person who is notoriously late and saying, "Boy, I'd really appreciate you coming on time. It's inconvenient for the staff, the students, and others if you're not here on time." And so sometimes we just drop these little hints. Sure would be nice, or we sure wish we could do this, and that's not really saying what you mean. You're just kind of hint dropping. So
Yeah, well, I got a lot out of your 8 minute TED Talk. So anybody that's into TEDx talks, look up Sarita's TED Talk. It's fast, but it's loaded with takeaways. I listened to it a couple times and my cheeks were aching from smiling because it's funny, but there's so many takeaways. So
I
thank you.
appreciate that. In fact, I think
Yeah.
the official title of my TEDx talk is Communication Lessons Learned from Mom. And I talk
Hmm.
about how growing up, my mother would say, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And we've all heard that. And of course, we know that doesn't work. And that's really the whole basis for everything I've spoken about over these 20 some years, which is the fact that we have so many opportunities where we need to really say something, even if it's unpleasant. And that I think that's where it started with mom saying, "Don't say anything at all," and me discovering, "Oh wait, we sometimes got to say something."
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Amani, moms are a real big theme for us today, huh?
I know. Yes.
Well,
It's
yesterday was
also
Mother's Day,
Mother's
so
Day,
Yeah.
so
that
it
was
makes
that was
sense.
perfect.
Yeah, it's in the universe. It's in the universe. We've come
Mhm.
to the point in the show where it's time to flip the script and we get you to ask us any question you want. Nothing is off limits. So, who do you want to ask the question to first? And what is said question?
Well, I'm going to circle back to Mandy because
Mhm.
she mentioned, Mandy, you talked about being a contract negotiator, which I think is the one of the most difficult jobs on the planet in terms of difficult conversations. And I'd love to hear more from you about what you said about making sure that you get what you want and that the other person gets what they want. What do you think are the key ingredients for making that happen?
Ooh, thank you. That's a great question. No one's asked me that yet. I think empathy is very important. I think we go into negotiation and it's all about us and we look like buffoons pounding our fists on the table and you're not going to get anything there. I think having a clear understanding of what the other person wants or needs and why is important. I think listening and not just at the table. I think listening along the way from the moment you meet somebody through the transaction is going to help you make your list of clues of things that are going to be important to the person on the other side of the table. So when you get to the table, you already know what their bargaining chips are, right? If you're listening along the way. I think asking deeper questions is really important and not just like somebody might say something at the table and I'm saying table, it's a virtual table most for the
Virtual
most part.
table.
It's over email, but like somebody might say, I can't do that. And sometimes you might just walk away. But I think asking a deeper question of like, hey, I get that. Like at first glance, that might feel like a deal breaker, but I'm curious, like, what about that can't you do? Is there any part of that you can do if the circumstances were different? I just think asking deeper questions is important. And then I think assuming nothing. Like
Mm.
let's practice a little Don Miguel Ruiz here. Like, assume nothing. Like, don't assume
Yeah.
that this person needs your business. Don't assume that they've got a timeline unless they've told you. Don't assume that they're jerks. Don't assume that they're nice. Don't assume they're smart. Don't assume they're dumb. Like, just really go into it quite literally. And if you don't understand, take the time to ask the question. So I think if you're doing those things, that's going to get you to a much better point in the negotiation and then truly everybody will walk away feeling better. You're not going to
Yeah.
it's not always going to be a win-win like you said before, but you might develop a deeper respect for the person on the other side. So when you work with them again and you are going to work with them again whether you think it's the last time or not, you will work together again in some way. At least you're going to have a better understanding and a mutual respect.
Yeah, I love, Mandy, that you mentioned listening. And that's something I always sneak in a lot when I'm speaking about the importance of listening, because we spend a lot of time talking about how to say things and what's the best way to approach it and favorite wording. But listening is really, I think, I always say listening is where the power is. And one of my favorite quotes that I share is speak in a way that people love listening to you,
Mm,
but the power is listen in a way that people love speaking to you.
mm.
And I think out of all the slides I share in my
Mm.
PowerPoint, that's probably the most powerful slide is, again, speak in a way that people love listening to you, but listen in a way that people love speaking to you. Because if people feel like you're going to shut them down when they share, then that's not a good place to be. So I love that you brought up listening in the negotiation, conflict resolution, difficult conversation world.
Yes.
That's a powerful piece.
Okay. So, do you have a question for me too, or are you ready for my question?
Oh, you have another question for me? I'm gonna let you ask the question, Amani. I'll spare you for now.
Oh, you're gonna spare me for now. So, okay, because I'll be curious though. What you okay? So that's good. So we'll spare you. But now,
Wait,
what?
ask, ask
You want me to ask
Amani.
him a question?
Yes, ask me a question. Yes.
Okay. You know
Yes.
what? I'm thinking the question I have for you, Amani, is if you were to speak to people who are new in the business,
Mm.
what would your advice be as someone who's in the speaking business? What would your advice be to the person who just is brand new, started out?
Yes. Yes. Oh, no one's asked me that before. I would say I want to try to share some different things for which day, but I would have to reiterate what you said about join groups where people are doing what you want to do. I think that is valuable, valuable advice. Um, I would also say kind of the strategy that I'm using, like, and similar to yours, like it's okay to speak in front of associations for free because there'll be people in the audience who can hire you. So, look at your local
Yes.
associations, then state, then like regional, do that. And then just, I would tell them, try to pick a topic that resonates with you because then you will stick with it. You won't give it up. It'll come from within and people will be able to tell that it resonates with you. Like I pick creativity and resilience through music, and you can tell when I'm on stage that, I'm digging that. Like I like that. And I think a lot of times people, particularly new speakers, they kind of chase trends. Now the current trend is like everyone wants to be in like an AI speaker,
Yes.
and like, all that. Whereas maybe you want to speak about like, the fundamentals of leadership, or you want to speak about, you know, which you can learn from growing a garden, anything, but stick with it. Don't just follow trends because trends come and go. But if you stick to your topic that you love, it'll take longer, but you'll be able to have a more sustainable career. That's what I would
Yes.
say. Yeah.
I love that advice because, again, having been speaking on my own full time for 25 years, I can't tell you how many trends have come and gone. you know, it's,
Yes.
it's and I think topics, there's some topics that like communication, thankfully, is evergreen, as we call it. It's a topic that will never go out of style. It'll never go
Yeah.
away. The need to be positive and resilient, those are topics that will never
Yeah.
go away.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
yeah.
I want to take you back to College Park. So we're going to go to 301 PG County. I don't know if you went to Bentley's a lot or, if maybe you went to other places. Um, and we're going to talk to that Sarita and give
Uh-oh.
her advice based on everything you've learned since you left College Park. What advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self, I would say follow the clues.
Ooh,
I am really, when I look back, I am just amazed at how there were always clues or breadcrumbs uh, that were in front of me. And I hark back to when I was an orientation leader as an undergraduate at the University of Maryland. We would do this entertainment, sort of kind of Saturday Night Live sketch type entertainment over and over all summer for all the groups that would come through. And I remember somewhere along the way in one of the little monthly updates, in those days it was like a paper newsletter, they would do updates of the week, and that one particular update, they said, this is the career we predict for everybody, all the orientation leaders, this is what we predict their future career is going to be. And at that time, I was an undergraduate psychology major, which means nothing, absolutely nothing. So I was open to what did they predict. But funny thing is, they said I was going to be a stand-up comedian.
oh,
And I
okay.
thought to
Oh, I
myself,
see that. I see
yes,
that.
and it's funny because it's kind of, and so full circle, when I look at all the opportunities, interjecting a little levity, a little humor, because one of my superpowers is to be able to do the difficult topics but make it fun, upbeat, and light, which seems like they would be oxymorons, that they would not go together. But I think a lot of times clients will say, I'll say, well, what made you pick me, or what stood out? And they said, we like the fact that you make it fun and upbeat, even though it's a difficult topic. And so that was a clue that like somewhere over the years, that seemed to be kind of like the underlying theme. And it reminds me of a joke, the National Speakers Association. Amani, I don't know if you've heard this joke yet, but or this line, but the line is, do you have to use humor to be a professional speaker? And people ask that all the time. And the answer is only if you want to get paid.
That's a great answer.
So, because, conferences and companies can get their industry experts, their thought leaders, or their subject matter experts. That's what I'm trying to say. They're subject matter experts in their company and their industry to speak, but it's not going to have the entertainment value that a professional speaker would bring. And so I have to chuckle because I think somewhere along the way, even when I was in Toastmasters, I end up going all the way to San Diego regional finals in the humorous speaking contest for Toastmasters. And so somewhere along the way, I feel like maybe a secret superpower that I have interspersed throughout is to be able to add a little levity, to add a little humor, because life is hard and difficult. We have enough heavy. So we've got to be able to keep it light a little bit, upbeat, and I think that works well in the professional speaking arena.
Yeah, agreed.
So this
Mandy,
tees up my final question
yeah.
perfectly. This is perfect. So being on the stage for more than 25 years, I am sure you have a stage folly or two. So
Oh,
can you think of a time whether you had a heckler or you had a stage folly or you fell or somebody announced the wrong name or like what is a stage folly? The
okay.
first thing that
So,
comes to mind when you think of.
well, first of all, let me just say that I've always lived in fear of something that one of my female colleagues had shared with me early on. And I was so busy worrying about that fear, I ended up with a different problem. But anyway, she said I don't wear long flowing skirts when I speak because one time I stepped forward and my heel got caught in my skirt and propelled me off the front of the stage. And so that was always, I always lived in fear of that and made a note to self, don't ever wear long flowing skirts because your heel might get caught in your skirt and you don't want to fly off the front of the stage. Okay, well, that didn't happen. But interestingly, something else similar happened. In fact, I was speaking in Seattle, Washington, and I was doing a keynote in the morning and then a breakout in the afternoon. And that's a common format. I think that really since like 2010, since the recession, a lot of clients have been wanting to get more bang for their buck. So it's not uncommon for keynoters to also throw in a breakout. And so in the morning, I had done this wonderful keynote on this expansive stage with the great backdrop. And so then I went a couple hours later and did a breakout and somehow forgot in my little memory that I was no longer on the expansive stage with the big backdrop. And so I took 3 steps to the left and fell off the side of the
Oh
stage
no.
because the breakout stage was probably like 5 feet,
Oh,
5 feet.
Oh,
And I remember a la Saturday Night Live, I jumped up and said, I'm okay. And the audience, after they had the look of horror on their face, they all burst out laughing. But the real punchline was the meeting planner who was sitting in the front row. And she says in a very loud voice, note to self, get bigger stage.
yes.
That's good.
Yes.
That's like double levity that was brought to
Yeah.
the
Yes,
situation. Oh,
exactly.
that's great.
Because meeting planners, as you know, it's like they live in fear that something will go awry and then the whole thing will be a bust. And so the fact that I could have a little levity when the audience initially looked horrified when I hit the floor, and then the fact that the meeting planner could then add on to piggyback on the levity, and then I continued on.
Oh,
So
that's
that,
Nice.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's
yeah,
great.
so I
Thank you
thought
for
I
sharing
didn't even
that.
have a long flowing skirt on and still hit the floor.
Hem
Yeah.
your pants and not long flowing skirts,
Yep,
right?
There
Yes,
you
yep,
go.
yes.
yep,
Do that. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah.
Well, we want to first thank you for taking time to appear with us on the show. I also want to thank you. I sent actually both of you. I sent Sarita and Mandy clips from my Brand Builders Group Speaker Showcase, and Sarita sent me back a whole long list of things that I did well and things I could work on. I was so appreciative of that. So thank you so much. I'm going to implement many of them. Mandy and I are going to meet up and talk about that as well. So just thank you for giving back. Thank you for being like a legend in the industry because you've been in it so long. You've been so successful. You give back by joining groups like Black NSA, and you're very active in local communities. So it's just an honor to have you with us. We'll make sure that
Thank you.
people can learn more about you, and I can't wait to be in the same room when you're speaking at one of your next events.
Yes, yes, I will let you know next time I come to Vegas, and
Yeah,
let's stay tuned. But I appreciate both of you inviting me. This has been a fun conversation.
it
Super
is.
fun. Thanks for being here, Sarita. You're the best. Thank you for tuning in to Adventures in Business. Don't forget to rate and review our podcast on the platform that you're currently listening it on. And don't forget to share it with your friends and anybody that might be as much of the business nerds as Amani and I are. See you next time for another captivating interview.